Hello and welcome to the first edition of this season's Base on Balls podcast here in the Johnny Lee Memorial League. I'm John Height. We have Bracton, Cody, Hendog, and Paul on the first episode of this podcast. We're obviously breaking down week one, everything to do with this awesome league, and also some previews for week two. First and foremost, guys, how do you guys all feel about this first week overall before we get into the matchup? Just your overall thoughts of everything that's happened. Cody, you go first.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit. Hen outscored me. Not happy about it. I checked the scoring, like emailed Fantrax, seeing if they could do anything. I think he's got me beat. Now we go into week two having to play each other. I hope I can, outscore him in week two. But no, I think it was a great week. I think a lot of activity, a lot of trades. I think a lot of teams performed really well. Some didn't and still won, like Bracton.
Right.
But, it was a good week.
Bracton, you go next.
Yeah, I thought it was a good week, fun week. I've watched more baseball this week than I think I've watched, in the last couple years. So I've enjoyed rooting for random storylines like Joey Weimer and, all these other random people, and it's just been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to this week. So, yep.
All right, Hen, what do you have to say?
Obviously, being on top, you're now the hunted. Me and Cody going to be duking it out week two. Anyone's game. People are saying this could be an early World Series match. Still a lot of ball left to be played potentially, but obviously satisfied with the team's performance. When you put up 1,200 points, you really can't be mad. Wander Franco really putting himself on the map, establishing himself as that former top prospect, finally living up to the hype.
And Paul, my week one opponent, how are we feeling?
All right. Hats off to you. You had a good week. But I think overall, the status of the league is pretty strong. There's always going to be weak teams. There's going to be good teams. But just looking at the scoring from this week, over half the teams are within 200 points of each other, which over the course of a long week, it's going to be higher points. It's a lot of differences in point scoring, but I think once we get into these, 7-day weeks, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Definitely. All right, so let's get into the matchups, and I think we have to start with the best matchup of the week, arguably. We could debate which one was, but Hen versus Jamie. This was just an absolute shootout. Hen got the win. Obviously, was the leading scorer of the week. It was 12-36 to 11-33. I'm going to let Hen start off with it. I want to hear your thought process. Did you ever think that Jamie was going to come up and catch you? And how does it feel that you have the best shortstop in baseball right now?
Having the best shortstop is pretty nice, John. And there was actually a point where I thought Jamie had me. I forget what day it was. It was a couple days ago. He doubled my score, and he kept it within 80 to 100. And if he had another day where he really popped off, maybe he had a bad pitcher, he had really good pitching. It was still a 100-point game, and he had 5 less starting pitchers than me. Jamie's got a really good team. Obviously, he's going to do some stuff to get himself over that top, or maybe he's just going to ride it out. But he's one of the best teams in the league for a reason. Has arguably, or maybe even the best hitting core, but the pitching just doesn't have that depth, and something you may need to look into.
Definitely. All right, so Bracton, Cody, and Paul, whoever wants to go, feel free to chime in. What were your thoughts from this matchup? And I'll give mine after you guys.
I like how Hendog got points from the youth, okay? So I am constructing my team a certain way, and everybody knows that I value people that are very young higher than someone who might be better now but older. But looking at Hen's team, he got 67 points from Jordan Walker, 100 points from Wander Franco, 68 points from Corbin Carroll. These guys are everything as advertised right off the bat here. It looks like they're going to be contributors to Hen's team for a very long time, and make him a threat for a foreseeable future. And I like how he made that trade for Freddie Peralta. I'm a big Freddie Peralta fan. It was hard for me to move him, but when I got what I got, I feel like it was a more than fair deal for Hens to keep up with everybody in the pitching race. So I really like Sandy Alcantara. I think he's one of the best pitchers in the league, and it's just as advertised, Hendog forced to be reckoned with going forward.
What about you, Cody and Paul?
So I'm actually looking at some pretty interesting things here. On paper, you guys are right about Jamie's pitching. He had a good point. He had 5 less pitchers. Listen to this, though. Jamie was actually 3rd in the league in pitchers' points. Hen was 1st. I was 2nd. Jamie was 3rd. He had 506 points from pitchers. Jamie actually leads the league in fantasy points per game at 9.68. So where Hendog had 135 games of points through that matchup, Jamie only had 117. Jamie's team is really, really good, but I think it goes to show you that when you put in the effort, I mean, if you look at like what Bry was doing all week, I mean, Bry was eating the free agency wire up. I mean, he was adding and dropping 4 or 5 players every day, making sure he was having a full lineup, making sure he was getting to the start max. When you take advantage of kind of what we give you with start maxes and your lineups, you're going to win games. And I think if Jamie would have done that, Jamie would have won this week. But that being said, man, Hendog's at the top right now. Like Braxton said, he's got a young team. These guys aren't going anywhere soon. I do think Jamie, if he makes the choice to kind of, grind a little bit, put in a little more effort into kind of the daily lineup stuff, he's right up there with the top of the league.
For sure. And Paul, you got anything to add?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at these matchups. The one that stands out to me, so Hendog won this by 103 points. The one that stands out to me is Drew Rasmussen. He scored 90 points.
Crazy.
I mean, 90 of 103. That's close. And I kind of concur with what Cody was saying that, he got 0 points out of Austin Gomber. I'm talking about Jamie. If he can get, just a few more starts, 14 out of the 19 possible, he's right there. He might even have won this matchup. So Jamie's got a great team. It's very top heavy, but it's also susceptible to injury. We'll see if that could bite him. But Jamie's not going anywhere, and he's a bona fide playoff team.
Yeah, he's definitely a contender. And I'm just going to add before we move on to the next one thing that I noticed. I know Braxton mentioned Sandy, but that trade that Hen and Jamie did to have Sandy, and I think it was for Bryce Harper, when obviously Bryce Harper's probably going to be out to at least the All-Star break. I mean, you're already seeing the effects of it. Sandy having that complete game already against Jamie week 1, which I thought was a kind of a narrative performance.
Pitching matters. Pitching matters in this league.
Huge.
And I mean, even with Jamie, though, it was just kind of funny. Like, Pete Alonso started off really bad, and then he got super hot by the end of the week. Jazz had a couple of home runs. Gunnar and Bobby Witt didn't have great weeks early on. But again, just Hen's pitching was so outstanding. And you mentioned people like Bry, and I'll even throw Teed in there, too, who are really good at the waiver wires. Every league I've ever been in with Hen, being called a waiver merchant, I think is a good thing. And there were a bunch of guys that Hen picked up throughout the week, too, that just made a difference. Like we were mentioning before, and he's just also that type of player. So there's a ton of people going to be looking at the waiver wires, I think, in future weeks. But now let's turn our attention to the commish. Cody versus Connor. This went as expected, I think, in Cody's weekly predictions. I think it was around this similar point differential. You have to double check me on that. But the final score was 1197 to 752. Cody's team obviously popped off. Interesting. Obviously, these two teams, Cody and Hen, will play next week. Cody, we'll start with you. Give me your thought process from this first week and just things you were happy and weren't happy about.
Yeah, no, the team played well. I do want to give Connor a little credit here. He was never in the matchup. He never had plans to be in the matchup. However, he was throwing it at me all week. And he ended up with 752 points. I didn't think he was going to get anywhere near. When he kind of took over here recently, he chose to blow the team up. go with prospects and try to build for the future. But he put together a good week. He got some guys, Garrett Mitchell, some players like that did well for him. I'm trying to look here at Garrett Mitchell. Yeah, Garrett Mitchell got him 45 points. I mean, not off the charts, but, he had some pitchers, Bryce Elder, that did well. But no, my team, I don't really have any complaints with my team. I thought kind of in the offseason I made a focus on trying to position myself where pitching was going to kind of be my strong suit and what would carry my team. And I felt it, it did that. I got 540 points from my arms. Thought I had a good week. But yeah, I'm definitely focused on next week. I kind of need to take back over my spot as top scorer, and I need Bo Bichette to catch Wander Franco and take over his spot as the number one shortstop. So we're hoping for some good luck here in week 2.
Could be some offensive fireworks. And Paul, we'll head to you now. What did you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I won't spend too much time on it. Cody's team is stacked. He's being extremely modest about it, but his team, his roster is top to bottom, right there with the best in the league. There's not really much to say. There's rebuild going on in Amarillo, and it's pretty clear that he might compete. We'll see for this year, but there's a clear rebuild. But it's going well, and we'll see where it goes.
And then Bracton or Hen, if you guys want to chime in, feel free.
Yeah, a lot of what I was going to say has been said. Cody just continues to be the class of the league here, putting up top points. Not the top points of the league this week, but just
appreciate that.
No, just insane numbers every week. But I really like how the team's constructed, top to bottom. It's at what everyone should strive to be. And but I really like the way Connor's gone about all this recently. Just traded for Michael Kopech and Spencer Torkelson from me, and I love those guys. Those are my dudes. So I wish them the best of luck over there with Connor. But something I'll be monitoring going forward. And just gonna see how Connor does going forward. I'm excited. So yeah.
And Hen, you got anything?
I mean, on Cody's front, I think I don't want to sound like a dead horse. Obviously, one of the best teams in the league. I'll give a shout out to Masataka Yoshida, obviously coming in.
Dog. And
like a dog. There were some concerns how he would transition from Japan to the U.S., but I mean, averaging almost 8 points a game. Had a nice dong, 6 RBIs, 7 hits. I mean, clearly adjusting well. Obviously, it's still early in the season, but getting a production like that, especially from a Boston team where there's a lot of question marks coming in, I think that's huge for Cody. And then for Connor, I mean, obviously we talk about he's in a rebuilding position, but just kind of being sharp on those, those waiver wires, those, low-key trade acquisitions is only going to help build the team up once the actual legit prospects come in. He did better than almost half the league. Outscored Jake, Bracton. There's a 4-point difference, between him and Homko. So, obviously that could basically go either way. So, obviously it's just a matter of staying on top of things. And, maybe you pull out a victory like that. It could really ruin someone else's season, especially if you're sharp like that.
Hey, quick shout out to Connor here. To touch on what Hen said, he had 16 starts this week as a rebuilding team. You don't see that a lot. Normally they're, if you whatever the minimum is, they're kind of scraping in right around the minimum. I mean, he had more starts than Jamie did. So, he didn't just go into this saying, I'm going to take my loss. Like he was throwing some players out there, trying to put together an upset. And I got to give him credit. I thought he had a good week, all things considered.
Definitely. And I mean, I want to bring up this guy real quick. Just Garrett Mitchell. We all were just tossing him around most of the offseason. I mean, me included. He had a great week, obviously, and we'll see how he fits into the Milwaukee outfield. But one other thing with Cody's team that I just think is also absurd is, Michael Harris, happens to get hurt this week. Really doesn't affect anything. The team still is the standard, like Bracton likes to say, which is very accurate. The team was playing well, and I'm sure it will be, obviously, the rest of the season. So now let's head to the next matchup on this list. We got Homko versus Smelly. We can either call him Smelly or Smelly Mullet. I love that name. Arguably the biggest, I guess you could say, upset of the week. I know we kind of threw that around while we were talking about it before the show started. Hen, we'll start with you. I want to hear what you have to say first. What did you think of this matchup? Would you classify it as an upset? And, what do you think of Smelly versus Homko?
I mean, obviously, these are two teams. Obviously, just trying. They're fighting, to see how they're doing. Obviously, these aren't the competitors of the league thus far. But I mean, you look at how well these two teams played, kind of across the period. Big shout outs. I mean, Justin Turner, 40 points, not a whole lot, but I mean, ranking amongst the top in Smelly's team for someone we thought may have been on the downswing. Ian Happ has been an absolute baller, 62 points, leading all hitters. But I mean, someone who really actually kind of balled out for a Smelly, an old beach dog who did make the final cut, the opening day cut. Scott Fellini, I mean, 69 points, pretty nice on his end. And obviously, when you have two teams of kind of these similar calibers, you never know, something like this could happen where, sometimes the ball rolls your way. But I think another thing we have to mention, similar to the Jamie matchup against myself, Homko only lost by 91. I'm trying to work the math out.
91.
91, very close game. 6 different pitchers, or 6 less starting pitchers. I mean,
Yep.
That's the difference right there. And even some of his pitching, you look at, he got 4 from Johan Oviedo, 3 from Eduardo Rodriguez, -1 from Ross Stripling, 5 from Alex Wood. So it wasn't even like he was getting a whole lot from his starting pitching to begin with, and he had 6 less starts in total.
Definitely. All right, we'll do Bracton, then Cody, then Paul.
I'd just like to point out that I think that Homko's team actually is a sleeper team to win a lot of games this year, because I really like what he's doing. Even though he lost this week, I mean, you look at it, 90 points from Gleyber Torres, 65 from Willy Adames, 90 for Luis Robert, about 89, 100 for Matt Chapman. Like
The boost of Matt Chapman.
Like what you guys were talking about with the arms and everything. If he gets a couple more pitchers either through trade or through just like streaming off the waiver wire or anything, I think he could be in serious consideration for that 7 seed that's been tossed around, because there's a lot of teams that are like clinging on right there. I think he's one of them. But to mention Smelly, I think he capitalized on the Yoan Moncada hot start by trading him away. I love Yoan Moncada. I think Yoan Moncada is a great player, but I think he really got some really good value there. I'm sure we'll talk about that trade in a little bit, but even guys like Victor Robles chipped in 50 points. Like guys like that you can find on the waiver wire really can make a difference. And Hunter Brown rebounded for him. I know that was big. He was talking about that. And then 64 points from Kodai Senga really stood out to me. I watched a couple of those games personally and thought he looked really good. So both these teams really in a good position right now, in my opinion.
And then Cody and Paul.
Yeah, so I hammered this prediction. I had Chihuahuas winning 803 to 798. Final score 847 to 756. I was pretty close there. But one thing I noticed about this is Homko scored 610 offensive points and lost because the bats are there. The guy's got the bats. I mean, 610, I would have to jump over here and look at where that kind of lines up. That is good for 6th in offensive production in the league. That's ahead of Bry. That's ahead of Tita, Scoot, Bracton. I mean, 610, that's 3 points behind Paul. That's 17 points behind Jamie. The problem is he finished 14th in pitching with 146 points, and I think it cost him the matchup. I'm with Bracton. I think Homko's got a good team. I think when the bats are there, it's kind of easy to identify what you need to fix. He did come short on the start max. The guys he did start, I mean, he had a lot of, less than 10-point outings. I think Luis Garcia will recover for him. and be solid down the stretch. Tanner Hawk was good for him. 2 starts, 40 points. But yeah, this was a good matchup. This was probably, I guess, if Hen and Jamie didn't go head-to-head, this would have been the game of the week. But I think both these teams are similar. But yeah, Homko's got to get that pitching fixed, and if he does, look out.
And then, Paul, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's been said, but 610 points out of Homko is on offense. Just his bats is elite level production. If he can get pitching, I think there's a possible marriage between Homko and Bry, because Bry has a ton of pitching. If they could maybe work out a few deals, I think both would benefit. And then I'll touch on the Chihuahuas a little bit. Moncada, key player. We'll see if he can keep going, keep his hot start. But Hunter Brown, who scored 43 points in his last start, if he can be that budding ace, that'll go a long, long way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hunter Brown is definitely one of these pitchers. I think on every side you see, like, oh, it's the breakout guy to watch.
Yeah.
I'm going to shout out on Homko's side. I mean, Gleyber Torres, everyone was training him around in the offseason. He had just a casual 90 bomb to start off scoring. Again, we know the bats are there. I like the point you could bring up that he could be trading with Bry in the near future. Hopefully, Bry, you're listening to this. Hint, hint. And then for the Chihuahuas as well, I mean, shout out Johnny Brito. I'm a Yankees fan. It's pretty cool he had him in. He had 2 good starts this week.
Yeah,
but
Johnny Brito.
He is. Yeah. And, I mean, I'm going back to the Max Free trade that I did with the previous owner. I mean, I traded Kodai Senga, and the dude already put up 64 points in 1 week. So could be regretting that one in the near future with the amount I gave up. But anyway, so a good matchup between those two. Let's move on to Tita versus Scoop. Tita won 871 to 714. Tita had 9 more pitcher starts than Scoop. I think if you commission, correct me or not, did Scoop hit the starter limit this week?
No, unfortunately, he did not.
So we can only wait and see what the commission will do in terms of that discipline. But back to the matchup. Paul, we'll start with you. What did you think about these two teams? I mean, especially with Tita making all the trades this week, and he put up a solid 871.
So I have a few thoughts on this. Tita is going to be a playoff team. I'm just going to say that now. That roster that he's building, he can go one of 2 ways, where he can just start selling those guys to get some more prospects and picks. But he's got enough that he can buy. That pitching rotation is solid, minus Shintaro Fujinami. But that he's got some real solid pieces to work with. And his bats are solid too. Tim Anderson, he doesn't have Lowe anymore, but Andrew Vaughn, he's made a lot of trades. He's a wheeler and dealer, as we all know. But I think he's really solid. As for Scoop, I think Scoop probably has the worst roster in the league. I don't think many would argue. I don't think Scoop would argue that. But to put up 714 points with only 10 starts, that's pretty incredible. Guys like Buxton, if he can be healthy, that's a huge piece. Rojas had a big week. Josh Naylor had a big week. So there's definite pieces for Scoop to work with. I saw he has Springs, but he's already traded him. Look out for the Rumble Ponies. He's gonna upset a team or 2, I think.
Definitely. All right, we'll do Cody, Bracken, and Hen.
So, yeah, this matchup, I got to say, pretty disappointing for me. I have been kind of beating the table for the Rumble Ponies all offseason. I like Scoop's roster. He had 11 less bats than Tita and 9 less pitchers. I think if he manages this team the way that he should be, he's up there as the 6th, 7th, or 8th best team in this league. But he didn't, and Tita did. Tita 100% outmanaged him for 11 days, and that's why Tita got the W. I know that's a little harsh, but it's the truth. I feel these two teams, kind of like the last matchup we talked about, pretty similar to me in terms of everything. Tita's got a little more pitching than Scoop has, but the bats, pretty similar. I do agree with Paul. Tita's legit. He's going to keep adding on to this team and kind of building it, to where he wants it to be, moving parts in, moving parts out. I fully expect Tita to be in the playoff picture. I got to go, and I got to say it one more time. I think Scoop can have the Rumble Ponies in the playoff picture, but he's going to have to manage his team. You're not going to be able to compete with the owners in this league, with 10 starts when the guy you're playing is doubling that. So, it's a disappointing matchup for me. I think it would have been at least neck and neck had Scoop managed his team the way he should have.
Definitely. And Braxton, then Hen.
I'm looking at Tita's team right now specifically. I really like what he's doing. I'm a huge Jonathan India fan. I'm a huge Andrew Vaughn fan. He's got some studs here, I think. And I really like how he has been picking up sort of these underrated, undervalued pitchers, like Sean Manaea. I also think that Sean Manaea is going to do wonders for him down the road here. But 871 on a week where he's made so many deals and just bringing in new guys and everything, that's really, really interesting to me. And I think that when we see him kind of I'm not saying stop trading, but stop making a million trades a week and everything, keep the same couple guys every week and everything, get some consistency there. I think that this team is a force, right up there for that 6-7 seed that we've been talking about all night. But I really like the acquisition of Garrett Mitchell as well. We've been talking about him throughout this show, but Garrett Mitchell's a dog. And going to Scoop here, I like Trent Grisham and I like a couple other players on this team, but like you guys said, 10 starts isn't going to cut it here. Even some of the rebuilders, we've been talking about, me and Connor and everybody, we're putting up 17, 16. Chad put up 18 starts. You got to have somewhere near that start level. So I hope that he does that in the future. So,
and you can finish this off.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about Scoop. So Jeffrey Springs, SP1 right now. It'd be unrealistic to say he finishes that the entire season or even by next week, but I just think he sold way too low on him. I mean, Ryan Helsley isn't really a formidable reliever. He's solid, but by no means great. It was a 1-for-1 straight up, and in that deal, you're usually going to want to take the starting pitcher. And I think, especially even if he held for a little bit longer, I think with one of these competitive teams, let's say a team who's starting pitching, they lose a couple of pitchers, I think you could have gotten more for it. I'm a bit puzzled by the move because I think that was something you could have capitalized on, it just either increase your depth or pick up a couple more prospects depending on what direction you wanted to go in. I'm not a big fan of that trade. I mean, for a guy who gives you 94 points in 2 starts, I think you could have gotten more, especially how early in the season it is.
Yeah, we're going to break that trade down in a little bit, but one thing I want to mention about both real quick is first, I think Tita so far, just because I've had the pleasure of trading with him quite a few times, is he does a really good job, and then it's very hard for people to figure this out, where he'll either upgrade or downgrade at positions, and when he's downgrading, he still collects so many young assets. Mainly, for me, I've given him so many prospects, and he's got a pretty good prospect pool as well, in addition to a team that, like we said, I think he's going to make the playoffs as well. I'm thankful that he was helping me with my catcher situation this week. He now has the platoon of Sean Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud. I know d'Arnaud is now hurt, but that's a pretty good 1-2 punch to roll out every week, assuming he keeps Murphy at any point. He got Brian Reynolds. I probably waited a little too early to trade Brian Reynolds. I love Andres Jimenez, but Reynolds has been the best player in baseball arguably this week. And on Scoop's team, I'll just say it, please set your lineup, Scoop. You have a pretty good team. We talked about it. You have definitely some good pieces. I love Logan Webb. He had a pretty rough day against the Yankees the opening day, but he still had 12 strikeouts. This is a team that can win games. So if you're listening, Scoop, please just set your lineups and you'll be fine. All right, so let's now go to the next one. Let's do Chad, a.k.a. the Stingray, versus Braxton. Braxton, you kick it off right away. What were your thoughts?
Okay, I'm not going to come out and say I had a great week. because obviously I didn't when it comes to scoring, but I like some of the things that I saw out of my team. Luis Arias, 65 points. I'm blown away. If somebody told me that he would be the third highest scoring second baseman heading out of week one, I would not have been so sure, but I'm very happy with his production. O'Neal Cruz, same thing. I wish him hopefully a speedy recovery. It's very unfortunate he got hurt today, but I really like to see Joey Weimer, 49 points in his first week of Major League Baseball action. 37-year-old Andrew McCutchen, 62 points. He's been a joy to watch. I've been very happy with Andrew McCutchen. And then capitalizing on some early things that I saw, like Kyle Gibson and Adam Duvall, shipping them out. I mean, they're going to help. What do you call it? They're going to help. Who did I trade him to?
Jake.
Yeah, Jake. They're going to help Jake win, at least in the short term. And I'm just excited to see going forward. I'm not very happy with Ken Waldichuk and Jared Schuster. Not great to start. Getting my hopes up here, so I sent them down. But credit to Chad here. It was a fun week. I really enjoyed it. So,
all right. I want to go straight to Cody. Cody, what do you have to say?
I'll tell you the stat line. I'm looking here. The stat line to me is Ramon Urias. 0 for 9 with 7 punchies for a -7. That's incredible. But no, this is two teams that are clearly rebuilding and looking for the future, stockpiling prospects, stockpiling draft picks. Here's what I like to see as a member of the LM committee. 18 starts for Chad, 17 starts for Bracton. Both guys were going for it. Awesome to see, teams that are rebuilding, but also like, hey, I'm going to throw everything I can at you and hope for an upset. Bracton's bats aren't bad. He knows that. I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, he's got some guys that can hit. I know he sold off a little bit towards the end of the week. It's going to be a long season for both teams, as I think the focus is going to be jockeying for draft position and getting prospects. But, Ramon Urias, probably not a great ad there, Bracto.
Hey, I mean, he started off really hot and then just 18 points on opening day and then nothing. So, well.
He laid a goose egg later on. But, all right, Hen, you go next.
Yeah. I think, these are two teams at the bottom. Some team has to win. Bracton was the one pulling out, which, obviously it doesn't affect it. It hurts the draft position, but he has other draft capital to work with. I think someone I want to spot out from his team who may have been the difference maker in this. Aroldis Chapman, is he back? I mean,
yeah.
God,
thank you.
Through four appearances, only one hit allowed. That's 8 Ks. I mean, you never know. Maybe it was the Yankees that were just making him bad. I don't know. This could be if someone needs a reliever down the road. I mean, and Chapman's still producing. You can get something a little bit for him potentially, Bracto. But
sure.
I swear to God, I didn't pay Hen to say that, but I appreciate it. That's good looking out.
I'm just looking at players to shout out from this. I mean, hey, another player. I mean, obviously, former top prospect Mackenzie Gore had a couple of quality starts for a pretty mediocre Washington Nationals team. 56 points. Obviously, not a whole lot bright in that area, but for that team. But I mean, hey, maybe this is a pitching piece that you can build along down the road potentially for both. I mean, just in regular case for Chad and also for the actual team, the Washington Nationals. James Outman obviously going to be a lookout for NL Rookie of the Year. He's been an absolute stud. Finally got the call up, so we'll be interesting to see if he continues that performance now that he's under the bright lights. But this is just a battle. This is just a tank battle, and I guess Bracton won, but Chad also won in a sense too.
The win-win.
I have Chad's first round.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Then it's a win-win for Bracto.
Yeah, and a loss for Stingray.
Yeah.
But Paul, you get the final word.
Yeah, I mean it's been said. Most of what I would say. Chad's got the pieces. Not for this year. I mean, Outman can be a dog. Mackenzie Gore, he's got some. Trey Jameson in his minors, he finally got his call up. Things are looking up in Oklahoma City, I would say. Not for this year, but he's got a lot of picks stockpiled, and I think he'll be right. He's doing it the right way, in my opinion. As for Bracton, I like a lot what Bracton is doing. He's really stockpiling assets that are going to help him out. Again, most likely not for this year. But he'll be in the conversation as well, I think. I think, there's a solid top 4 or 5 teams, and then there's 4 or 5 teams in the middle, and I think Bracton's probably one of those. But he's got a lot of versatility with what he can do. If he wants to keep selling, he's got the pieces like Aroldis Chapman, Zach Greinke if he's still alive at the end of the season. Adam Duvall if he's still producing. Bracton's got a lot of options. But it was nice to see him get a win week 1.
Yeah, Bracton got the win. I know Bracton's taking a lot of heat this week. I mean, I have given him a ton of heat. I know a couple of us have. But I just think, he got the win, which is all that matters. You'll take a win any way you can get. We'll talk about the Ricky Tiedemann trade a little bit later. I thought that was the best part of his week by far.
I agree.
Getting that stud. But, overall, you guys kind of hit on everything. Just a little fun fact about James Outman. I remember when Bry first joined the league. I think I had Outman, or whenever you say his name, and Bry was like hounding me for him, and I just didn't understand why, and now I do. So that was a mistake by me letting him go. Like you mentioned, Hen could be a dark horse, maybe Rookie of the Year candidate if he keeps it up. But let's head. There's 2 more matchups left before we break down some deals. So let's head to Bry versus Jake. Bry won this one pretty easily, 10-91 to 6-15. And we'll start with you for this one because I'm going to have Paul start off the last one. So, Hen, what did you think of this one? And is Bry, we could talk about this too, with the amount of trades Bry's made this weekend overall and how good this team has become, is he officially a lock for a contender the rest of the season?
Now, obviously, a lot can change. As we said earlier, Memorial Day hasn't even happened yet. There's still a lot to happen. But, hey, he definitely has a legit squad offensively. You just look. He has the bats to bode, scored over 600 points, and then the pitching side, almost 500. You look at who he's got facing. Patrick Sandoval gave him a nice outing. Nick Lodolo did well. Christian Javier, someone who I've been really high on, had a couple of, one good start, one not great start, but obviously early in the season. And then you look at some of the bats. Stephen Kwan dropping 68. Randy Arozarena just continuing his performance. And Rafael Devers solidifying himself still as one of the top players. There's definitely the pieces here. You look at some of the depth, and some of it's a bit confused. It's a bit concerning. So maybe as we can go further in the season, Bry still has a top contending team. I could see him, potentially buying some depth pieces, so he's not, starting or even rostering the likes of Miguel Cabrera, Elvis Andrus, Matt Carpenter. That's obviously concerning, especially when, you're heading deeper into the playoffs and some of these players wouldn't even be touched on other rosters. But obviously a great first week, dominant first week, and obviously looking to build off that into next week.
Definitely for true. Paul, you're up next.
Yeah, Bry has a solid team. Solid and young. Albies killing it, Pena, Randy Arozarena. His bats are there. Like I had said earlier that, he's got a ton of pitching and not a lot of bats. He has bats. 607 points, obviously nothing to sneeze at. The player on this team that I probably like more than anyone is Nick Lodolo. I think he's going to be a dark horse for the Cy Young this year. I actually truly believe that. I think, this time next year we're talking about Lodolo among the Sandy Alcantaras and, the top of the top, Shane McClanahan's of the league. So he's a really good player to have. On the other side with Jake, he's got some pieces. He's one of the bottom teams, I would say, but there's definitely pieces there to build on. I've made it clear that I don't understand his fixed relief pitcher strategy. I think he should make some trades, get some more starters, get some more bats. But there are pieces there for sure. Springer is there, McCarthy, Schwarbaum. There's definitely pieces to work with. Obviously, Manny Machado. But we'll see what the Fightin' Phils, what the direction they'll take.
Definitely. Let's go to Bracken and then Cody.
I'm a huge fan of Bry's team and what he's doing. I've always liked some of the players he's had. It's unfortunate Eloy Jimenez got hurt again, which sucks because I'm a huge fan of his. But I really, really, really like what Bry's doing, stockpiling all these pitchers. I mean, look at Jesus Luzardo, 66 points, Lodolo 72. Bought Alek Manoah, had a nice start for him. Just Bry, I think what he's doing is working. Obviously, 1,091 points in week 1 here. Good for, I believe, fourth? Yeah, fourth in the league. So I'm really interested to see what he does, like you guys were saying, in terms of keeps dealing to replace some of those clearly unrosterable bench bats like Elvis Andrus and Miguel Cabrera. But in terms of Jake, again, 14 starts for someone who's, he is trying to compete, but he also traded for Adam Duvall and Kyle Gibson for me. So hopefully those guys do what he wants them to do. But really interesting week for Bry, and we'll see how Jake does going forward. But encouraging for Bry, for sure.
And Kamish, you got the last word.
So, yeah, this was a good team versus a bad team. I kind of seen that coming in. I think where I misjudged was I didn't know how that Bry was this good, and I didn't realize that Jake's team was that bad. But I think some things were exposed here. Yeah, question has been thrown around, is Bry a legit contender? Bry is very much a legit contender. He's got the bats that are going to play. He's stockpiling arms. As we've said in this show numerous times, pitching. It's how you win. I want to echo Paul's statements on Nick Lodolo. That's his ace. That's his guy. That guy is going to lead this team. I don't know where Jay goes from here. It's pretty bleak. I don't have a lot of positive things to say. I can go through and talk about, he's got Manny Machado. He's got Corey Seager. He's got some guys he could flip for some prospects. This team needs to be looking at 2026 and not 2023 anymore. It was a pretty bad week for him. I think he was exposed a little bit. I do want to touch on the trade here. I see his name, Ryan Helsley. For me, I see the Ryan Helsley for Jeffrey Springs trade a lot differently than him. Springs had a incredible week, 100 points between 2 starts. I'm not sure the guy scores 100 points the rest of the season. Ron Helsley, for me, is a top 5 closer. I know he blew a save early on in the year. Closers tend to do that. It seems like closers start a little slower than starting pitchers do for whatever reason. But again, I do see why Jake made the move in terms of he really needs pitching. He traded away Zach Wheeler for Tommy Edman. And I think he kind of thought bringing in Jeffrey Springs was going to fill that void. I disagree that it's going to. I don't place much value in Springs moving forward. But, if I was Jake, I would start maybe a fire sale as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we definitely have to see what Jake will do going forward because these next few weeks are very important, especially if this team continues to lose games and take themselves out of the playoff picture in terms of looking ahead. But our last matchup that we need to look at, it was me versus Paul. I got the win, 1,041, 839. And for this one, I want Paul to go first, and then I'm going to go second, and then we'll have everyone else chime in. So, Paul, give me your thoughts from our little clash.
So, okay. Trust tree, everybody. And I told this to Cody. I might be a seller. I'm just going to say it now. I might be selling.
It hurts.
I think I have 36 or whatever prospects. So, I have a ton in the prospects, but I just don't have a whole lot of confidence that I'm going to be able to compete, because I thought my team would have a better week than they did. And my team still had a pretty decent week, over 600 points with the bats. But my pitching was god-awful. Nola, 2 starts, only had 17 points. I had 3 or 4 different pitchers that went negative. I'm not trying to, bring my team down, but it's not looking as good as I thought it would look in Norfolk. But we'll see. I play. Who do I play this week? Annapolis. So if we can get a win this week, I might change my tune. But I have some tough matchups coming up after that. We'll see where I go. But as for John Haight's team, I said it before this week started. John Haight has the best roster in the league, and it's headlined by the best player in the world. You can't compete with one guy that scores 153 points. It's just, hard to come back from that. So hats off to John Haight. He's built such a great team in the last, 2 months. He's going to be the force to be reckoned with. I think it's going to probably come down to him and Cody in a championship, but we'll see what happens.
First, I appreciate the kind words, Paul. And I'm going to say, going into this week, you've been very low on your team. I was worried about your team coming into this week, and especially throughout the week as well, because I still think you have some very good pieces. Adley just tore the cover off the ball this week. You got Jay Ram. There's so many guys on this team that I was monitoring throughout this opening day week. But I'm going to say with my team right now is, obviously, Cody and Hen had fantastic weeks. Jamie had a great week. Brian had a great week. This is not the real Hartford Yard Goats. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. My offense, I thought, was pretty good this week. 700 points just bats. But the thing I want to emphasize is that I think I would have had so much more points if, A, my full pitching was healthy, because I also want to bring up that I still have Verlander, Rodon, Fried, Severino on my IR, and hoping they'll come back soon. And I'll talk about later how I hope that at least one of them come back for Jamie and then Hen the following weeks. But my pitching was so bad this week, in my opinion. Corbin Burns ending with -2 overall. I had a rough week of Carrasco, who's not going to be smelling the field once these pitchers come back. Steven Matz had a rough week. Matz, Carrasco, some of these dudes I was starting are not going to be playing within 3 weeks once everyone comes back. Shout out Seth Lugo, gave me 70, which is actually pretty funny. He might have been my highest scoring pitcher. Yes, he was. But Shane Bieber looked human. I think Zach Gallen looked human this week too. So I expect him, Burns, to all come back. And I think, once we get to these normal weeks as well, where it's not just 2 weeks in one in terms of the scoring, where you're going to have to make decisions over pitching, I actually will have to make some tough decisions here and there of who I'm going to start each week. But I'm pretty confident in this group. And I think this will be the last time that my pitching, ends with 300 points only. I think there's a lot of room for improvement that's going to happen pretty soon. And again, I hope it's soon when I'm going up against Jamie and Hen, but this is not the real Hartford Yard Goats. All right, so that's me and Paul's take. Let's go to Cody, Braxton, and then Hen.
Yeah, so this was the matchup I had my eye on. I'm going to start on John Haight's side of things. Yeah, John Haight has built a team that beats my team every year. So and I've spoken with John Haight about this privately, but where I put such an emphasis on the kind of the roster churn, the young. I want to stay young. I don't want to run into these things where I've got some 32-year-old dude who loses value real quick and I don't get nothing for him. I focus too much on that, and it's what keeps my team just a step below a team exactly like this, where you've got. I mean, think about you run into the yard goats in the playoffs, and Matt Olson drops 95 on you. Ohtani drops 1 million on you. Xander Bogaerts drops 78. Mike Trout drops 92. And oh yeah, here's Aaron Judge with a 90. I mean, you literally can't compete with that. His offense. Let me look at this. His offense at 717 outscored. Let's see here. It outscored 1, 2, 3, 4. His offense outscored 4 teams in the league combined. That's pretty incredible stuff right there. And I do agree with him on the pitching. His pitching is there. He really ran into some bad luck. That's going to change as the course of the season goes on. You know, it's a long year. But yeah, the yard goats are for real. For the Tide, I can't get behind a rebuild here. There's just too much talent. There's just what I would do. It's not my team, but what I would do. Paul has really amassed a really nice farm system. A lot of prospects. It's deep. He's got some top guys there too. I would really check this roster out and identify my weaknesses and use some of those prospects to fill those holes and get this team up. He is a hair below, myself and Bry in height, a hair below. And I think, if he was able to maybe plug some players away from, say, Bracton, say Homco, Chad, I don't know what's there. I don't know what's available. I'm just saying. Even Jake, for example, go get Manny Machado. You put Manny Machado on Paul's team right now, really changes things. Shout out to Paul. Paul had some second base kind of turnover this offseason. He settled on Thairo Estrada, who finished this first week as the 4th best second baseman in baseball with 60 points. I've been kind of eyeing that all week, trying, just seeing if Paul made the right call on kind of flipping some. I think at one point Paul had Ozzie Albies. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So, and he kind of worked his way. I think at one point he had Ketel Marte, and I think he ended up on Thairo Estrada, who I think you picked up out of free agency. Or did you? No, he got him in a trade. You got him in the Ketel Marte trade.
Yeah, he was a small piece in that trade.
Yeah. But anyways,
my goal there is just to give a rotation between him, Isaac Paredes, and Bryce Turang.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, this team's good. And I just mentioned John Haidt with 717 offensive points. I mean, Paul's offense was 613. I mean, it was right there. Now, the pitching does fall off. But when you've got, Pablo Lopez had a strong week. He's got Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola is not going to be giving up 8 runs in 9 innings like that. I hope you have yeeted Spencer Turnbull into the shadow realm by this point. Jose Urquidy is solid. Paul's got some. If I don't want to overspeak, I'm not looking right now. I'm pretty sure Paul's got several pitching prospects that are close.
He's got Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah, he's got G-Rod on the way. You called it. Yeah. Something's going to happen with Sixto Sanchez at some point. I believe it. It's got to. Gordon Gracefo. Gavin Williams, one of the best prospects in baseball in AA for the Guardians. I would not be focused on a rebuild here. I would be focused on identify my weaknesses, go pluck off other teams with some of the prospects I've amassed. This was a good matchup. Paul was very close for a long time. When you're playing the team that's got Ohtani for 11 days, it's hard to hold on for that long. So, yeah, good matchup.
Definitely. All right. We'll rip the Band-Aid off, do Bracton, then Hen, because Bracton, we've had some discussions about the teams recently, so let's just hear what you have to say.
No, I told you I like your team for the next 2 or 3 years, and then we'll see what happens. But I think that you're right. I was going to mention a lot of what you were saying about how a lot of your guys underperformed, and I think like hitters too. And Francisco Lindor, what do you call it?
He was asked this week.
Yeah, like that. That's what I was looking at. Mookie Betts too. Like I'm looking at it. He was projected 85 this week. He gives you 57. Like that's not going to happen every week, I don't think. And what do you call it? I think you traded for JT Realmuto, right? I think that'll be helpful because I noticed you played like 5 or 6 different catchers, and how hopefully you don't have to do that again with JT Realmuto being the way he is. But even he only didn't help very much this week. I don't know how long you had him, but it's just 8 at-bats, 5 strikeouts. Like that won't happen again.
All negatives.
Yeah, and then pitching, Chris Bassett, I think, will rebound. I'm a huge Chris Bassett fan. I don't think that he's going to be like that for your season going forward. And then Corbin Burns, again, same thing. So everything you've been saying. I think you'll have a even better week next week. But Paul, I think Paul has got a lot of good pieces too. I don't know if rebuild's necessarily what I would do. I think you should come get Luis Arias from me, man. Maybe we can talk about that. But I love some of the pieces. Ryan Mountcastle 60 points, dog. Adley 72 points, dog. Like Jose Ramirez is elite as advertised as always, and then I hope that Carlos Correa can rebound for you too. But I mean, nice surprise in Bryce Terang here having a good start to the year. So we'll see what happens going forward. But both these teams I see as bona fide playoff teams going forward for sure. So,
and we'll finish with you.
So I mean, getting 1,000 points from John in a week where a lot of things didn't go right for him. He dealt that injury. I know the whole Max Fried situation happened. JT Realmuto didn't really perform. You had some other underperformers. Jeff McNeil really didn't give you a whole lot either. So I mean, 1,000 points on what is a down week is kind of more scary side for any of the other contending teams because what is it when he is on? But Paul, I mean, I think there's time where you can, if the evaluation's still there, and the worst, in my opinion, the worst spot to be in a sport is mediocrity. But I think also just looking who would be getting the exemption in a potential rebuild. I mean, there are a lot of, not only do you have a lot of good players, but I think a lot of just young players in general where you would have to make some tough decisions on whether or not to keep some guys, and then if you end up keeping them, I think that might hamper you from fully truly being able to rebuild and not just be kind of slightly worse with more prospects. But I think this isn't a decision you should make right away. There's still a lot of season left, and once you get in the playoffs, I think anything can truly happen in that situation. So I would say wait. I'd say wait at least a little bit, see how the season evolves around the summertime. If you still feel that way, or if you still feel you're not the part, then maybe you decide to do that. But I think there's still a lot of time before you can really commit fully to a rebuild, especially given how much there's so much up in the air because of how much new ownership has come in the past 3 months.
Yeah, definitely. I also agree with everyone said about your team, Paul. I just think there's so much talent there already, and you already have the youth. And even if you wanted to buy a little bit as the season goes along, if you string along some wins, you have the prospect capital to do it if you ever wanted to. And, you definitely have a squad going forward. But let's now turn to our favorite part of this league, the deals. There were a lot, so we're not going to go through everyone because that would be just stupid. So we'll start with the commish. We'll go around, just deals that stood out, deals you liked, deals you didn't like, who won, who lost. So Cody, take it away.
Yeah, so I won't go on forever, and I'm not just going to talk about trades I was involved in, but I do kind of want to give a backstory on one. I'm trying to scroll up here to find it. Okay, right here. Bry gets Alex Manoah. Cody gets Patrick Sandoval, Oswaldo Peraza, Davies De Los Santos, Warming Bernabel, and Yanquel Fernandez. So that trade's interesting. Again, this is probably one of those trades that bite me in short term definitely helps me long term. I really like a lot of those prospects I got. I know you're thinking, dude, you're a top 2 or 3 team in the league. What are you even worried about prospects for? It's just something that I do. But there's a little backstory there. I came incredibly close to getting Nick Lodolo in that trade. And to be completely honest with everyone, if I would have stood my ground longer, this was about a 4-hour back and forth constant trade negotiation. And if I would have stood my ground about 30 more seconds, I probably would have gotten Nick Lodolo. But he just kept adding prospects that I thought were guys that, like Peraza is close and a top 50 guy. De Los Santos, I can see being a top 20 guy. Bernabel, he's a Rockies prospect. I always like Rocky bat prospects. Yanquel Fernandez is a guy that's getting comped to Yordan Alvarez. So, I mean, for me, it was I have a strong distrust in Alex Manoah right now, and I kind of just wanted to bail on that, even knowing what the risk to that was, which is exactly what it was, because 2 days later he had a 40-point start. And Patrick Sandoval, for me, had a 20-point start. I knew that when I made the trade. I knew that risk. But I was looking for a safer arm with a load of prospects coming back, and it's exactly what I got. So ultimately I was happy with it, but I do have to mention I was so close to getting Nick Lodolo there, and I didn't stand my ground long enough, and I do have kind of regret for that. But I want to go to I don't want to go individually. I want to talk about the week Tita had. Guys, if we're being honest, I don't know who all here made a trade with Tita. If you did, you probably lost it. The guy put on a masterclass for 11 days. I mean, he went and got Zach Wheeler. He went and got Brian Reynolds. Looking back, here's flipping guys. He gets Realmuto for MJ Melendez. He trades Realmuto for Sean Murphy. Tito seemed to be kind of prowling around the league, picking off guys that owners were panicking on. Does that make sense? I know. For instance, with John Haidt, the Braves were doing some weird things with Sean Murphy, and I think it was kind of making John Haidt uncomfortable. He, and Tita kind of pounced, ended up with Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy's probably going to finish the year as the top 2 or 3 catcher in the league. Again, John Haidt probably knew that risk when he made the trade. But Tita just really had a good week. I think he really changed his positioning in the league with the trade. But Tita, if you're listening, I think I got you on the Jonathan India trade, dude. I think I got you with Brandon Lau and Noelvi Marte for Jonathan India. I think I got you. But anyways, we'll talk about that later. But John Haidt, I liked your trade of getting Jose Altuve for Starling Marte. That was a good trade. Braxton and Hendog, I know you guys are going to want to talk about this one. I'm going to leave I'm going to mention this trade. I'm going to let whoever wants to dive into it can dive into it. Braxton got Ricky Tiedemann, Gavin Stone, Jackson Jobe, Kyle Stowers for Freddie Peralta. I told Braxton when he told me he wanted to trade Freddie Peralta, he needed to kind of capitalize and get max value. I think it was safe to say Freddie Peralta was probably the highest end player Braxton owned at that time. And I'll stop there and let you guys kind of dive into that.
Hendog, you can go first on this one if you want.
Yeah, obviously, I feel like, just talking about general, I feel like, especially in the offseason, I was making moves to see, where I wanted my team, and now that I'm in a spot, I want to see how things play out. But this was the first big move, because going into this year, I knew I had a good team, but I knew, obviously, John and Cody had very good teams. I was kind of seeing where I was positioning myself, and I was like, do I really want to commit to being a contender, or do I want to wait a year and see what happens? But I think I made a decision. I think I'm having my decision. Freddie Peralta had another absolute banger of performance earlier today. So But I think that my philosophy on this was obviously I'm giving up a lot of prospects, but I think there are prospects that I can afford on giving up, if that makes sense. I mean, Ricky Tiedemann's a stud pitcher, but, I still have, in terms of prospects, Andrew Painter. We'll see what happens with Daniel Espino. Taj Bradley should be getting the call-up soon. And then you have some other guys who maybe aren't as high of a ceiling, like a Quinn Priester. I know Cody's really big on Robert Gasser, and then if you're looking way out, Dylan Lesko. So I still have the pitching prospects to go, which I didn't feel that much for him. And I felt my big thing, I know I had the hitters, but my pitching, I made that trade for Sandy. Max Scherzer, who in theory should be an ace, has been kind of a dud this season. Hopefully it's just a slow start. So I thought I needed another ace to really position myself because pitching is so important. But I don't know. We'll see how it is. I might have overpaid, but we'll see how this works.
Yeah, and
Braxton, your response.
Yeah, Ricky Tiedemann is my favorite pitching prospect in baseball right now. I think he's got top 20 prospect in baseball upside after this year. I think that he is going to follow a similar path to Alek Manoah and be up fairly quickly. And I don't want to make the same mistake I made on Alek Manoah. That's always the trade that's been haunting me in my head that I traded.
What was that trade, Braxton?
I traded Alek Manoah and a second-round pick for Isaiah Kinner-Falefa, and I regret it to this day. That was the worst trade I've ever made in any fantasy league ever, and I've made some bad ones.
Right.
But that one has always messed with me. But I think Ricky Tiedemann is probably a top 5 pitching prospect in baseball right now, in my opinion. Gavin Stone, I'm not extremely big on, but I later flipped him for in a deal where I got my hopeful catcher of the future and Wilmer Flores. I'm also a big fan of. I love Jackson Jobe, and then traded Kyle Stowers for Sean Manaea, and then flipped Sean Manaea for 2 prospects. So I really consider it 5 prospects for Freddie Peralta. I think that was. Like Cody said, I tried to get max value, and I mean Ricky Tiedemann. If somebody were to tell me that in 2 years Ricky Tiedemann's 23 years old and averaging 25 points a game, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. I think that highly of him. So he's been a player I've been trying to get for a very long time. Hen can attest to that. I asked him for him as soon as he joined the league in January. So happy to finally get him, but I know Freddie Peralta is just this great thing, and I hope that Hen can enjoy it going forward. But I wanted to Cody talked about it a little bit, but I thought the most interesting trade of the week was the Jonathan India, Brandon Lau, Noelvi Marte trade. I know when he traded for Brandon Lau, Cody thought that he could add some rebound potential, but now I'm looking at it, Brandon Lau scores 2 more points than Jonathan India, so I view it as Tita buying 2 years of elite shortstop or elite second baseman play for Noelvi Marte, which I don't know, maybe we'll see how it works out for him. But Noelvi Marte to me is a bona fide top 30 prospect in baseball, and I think Cody did really well there. But I think Jonathan India is a stud too. He's one of my favorite second basemen in baseball. So we'll see what goes on going forward. But I think Cody got the better end of the deal on that one. So.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you there. I mean, I had Noelvi Marte. I think I traded him in a deal for Mike Trout earlier in the offseason. So we know the caliber prospect he is, and Cody's prospects also are, I think, very underrated in terms of if you rank the prospect rankings in this league. Besides having the elite team, he's got some elite specs. And I think the Hen Braxton trade with Freddie Peralta, I'm not a huge Freddie Peralta guy. I know it was only 2 starts. I know they were good starts, but I think both sides have made a lot of sense for. Again, Braxton, I've been shitting on your team all week, but this was probably one of the best trades I've seen you make, I think, in any league so far I've been with you in, no matter the sport. I really like Ricky Tiedemann, and I just think that Ricky Tiedemann would have been moved for like a pitcher, like, I don't know, maybe like a Shane Bieber caliber. I don't even had seem like a Luis Castillo. I kind of have Freddie Peralta a tier below that, excuse me. But again, if Freddie Peralta plays like that the whole year, obviously I think it's going to help Hen the rest of this season. Again, I give a lot of credit to Hen for his pitching getting so much better. I love the Sandy trade. I tell him about it all the time. getting rid of Bryce Harper because his outfield was already stacked, and getting a top 3 pitcher in baseball. And I'll just say with Tita before I hand it off to Paul. I think the Brian Reynolds Jimenez trade. I think I've won a decent amount of trades in this league. Probably in my mind, probably like 3/4 of them. This one, I think I lost. And the only reason I did it was because my outfield was just so crowded. And despite the hot stretch Reynolds had, like when I had Judge and Betts and Trout, like I wouldn't have started Reynolds over any of them maybe until the very end of the week when I knew like, okay, this dude is just averaging 15 to 20 points a day. I have to start him. I really liked Jimenez. I got a little bit of youth to my team that's, obviously on the older side. I made it a focal point to make sure every position is both elite and also deep. You saw like my first baseman, I got Rizzo to back up Olsen. I have a platoon of second baseman of Jimenez, Altuve, and Simeon. And third baseman, I still have Bregman and Arenado. But the catcher situation, I could actually give some insight into that because Tita did a really good job. He was hounding me for multiple days, bringing up how Murphy is such a question mark, and Real Muto made a ton of sense, which it did. I think Murphy, now that of course Darno's hurt, he'll probably be the starter for the rest of the season, knowing my luck. But I still love Real Muto. He's still a top 3 catcher in baseball until he falls off. So I'm not going to kill myself for that trade. Again, he does an excellent job whenever I trade with him, where he's always able to get the extra asset and just any sort of specs that he likes from my team. But I like Real Muto, and I love getting Jose Altuve for Starling Marte. I don't know how hurt Marte is. I know he got hurt today in the Met game against the Marlins, but Altuve, is probably the best second baseman in the last God knows how many years. So as long as he's still 3/4 of himself, I'm excited for him to join the push for the playoffs back when he returns, hopefully in June. But some other trades I'll just go over real quick that I was looking at. Again, I think Brackton had a good week with trades. We talked about Tita. One thing I want to bring up, which is just absolutely absurd, because I'm not insanely high on Garrett Mitchell, was the one, I guess, Tita miss, I think, in my opinion. Again, I think he had a fantastic week, was trading away Brett Beatty for Garrett Mitchell. Just because, like Brackton's mentioned for a lot of times, what's going to happen with the Milwaukee outfield. Is he just going to be like flip-flopping when by the time Frelick, Weimer, and Churio and all those dudes are up? How are they going to do it? Will he just turn into a utility guy? I love Brett Beatty. He's one of the best, infield prospects in baseball. We know he's been tearing it up for the AAA Mets team, I think Syracuse. So I'm not a fan of that trade. Maybe Mitchell will prove me wrong. Maybe he'll turn into a star. And so far, he's looked pretty good. He's looked really good, actually. So definitely a trade, I think, at least right now, getting Beatty was a W for Connor. And one trade I want to actually ask you about, Brackton, before we head to Paul, this is the last thing I'll ask, is why did you sell off Gabriel Moreno for Logan O'Hoppe after 1 week?
See, I don't know. I really, really, really like Logan O'Hoppe. And I think that, the team is better. I know you're a big team guy, John Haidt. Is like if you guys on a better team, then what do you call it? I think that Logan O'Hoppe hitting in that lineup gives him a real opportunity. I've liked what I've seen from him so far. I actually watched some Angels games because they've been playing against some guys that I've had pitching, and I don't know. He caught my eye. I know Cody's big on him too, but I really like Wilmer Flores too. That's part of the deal that not a lot of people are talking about. I think I might have gotten a slight catcher downgrade for an upgrade at the pitching prospect. I know some people are really hit and miss on Gavin Stone. I'm not incredibly high on him. I think he's a good player, but I really, really like Wilmer Flores. So that's another part of the deal not a lot of people are talking about. Also, I didn't call up Logan O'Hoppe. I called up Moreno. So it was basically, I liked that part of it too, where I didn't have to have him start. Because if I'm really committing to a rebuild, I don't want to have some of these guys that I probably rush to call up, like Waldichuk and Schuster, Moreno, and Ryan Papaya, and those guys. I really think that I like the flexibility that's there with Logan O'Hoppe. If I want to call him up at some point later in the year, if I change my tune around, then maybe. But if not, I'm perfectly content just sitting on him, waiting for next year when I decide to be better, and hopefully some of my big guys or big prospects are coming up. So I like that he kind of fits the rest of what I've got going on. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious.
Yeah.
And, from all that. But Paul, end with you first before you talk, Paul. I like that you brought in, I think it was Bautista, the Orioles closer. He just put up a shit ton of points against me. I think this week there were a couple of games where he was closing against the Yankees, and I know he got some saves. So I think that was a good trade to bolster your reliever. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I made that deal because of what happened with Edwin Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
Had to do something in my bullpen. Had to have at least one closer. Plus, Raisel Iglesias, he got put on the IL right before the season started, so I pretty much had nobody. So I had to get at least somebody in there. And, I, as an Orioles fan, obviously, I like Felix Bautista. I think he's going to develop into one of the, top 10 maybe, hopefully, closers in the league. But that also depends on how good the Orioles are going to be. So we'll see. I like that trade, but we'll see how it ends up. I wanted to spend most of my time just applauding Bracton and his genius because Cody had said Tita worked everybody this week. I think Bracton worked everybody this week. So he first capitalizes getting 3 prospects for Kyle Gibson, obviously an Oriole, but he had a good first week, and I think Braxton really capitalized on it, and then capitalized again by selling Adam Duvall for 3 prospects.
Just crazy.
Thank
oh
you.
my God, the dude was on waivers.
Both
In
of them
no
were.
world is he worth 3 prospects.
Not close. Not
okay.
close.
Jesus.
I'm not trying to dog the other side of the trade, but it's to be able to finesse that is just absolutely great work. And then this Kopech trade, where he got
Yes.
and Wilkerman Gonzalez, Brandon Shoemake, and a 3rd-round pick just for Michael Kopech. That's 4 assets for 1 pitcher. And personally, I'm not super high on Kopech. 2 years ago, I thought he was going to be a phenom, but you can only have so many injuries before questions start being asked. So for those 3 players, Kopech, Gibson, and Duvall, Bracton got 10 assets. For a team that's rebuilding, that's how you rebuild. If people that are rebuilding or want to rebuild, they need to take some notes because that's how you do it. To hop around to some other trades, that India trade, India for Lowe and Noelvi Marte. To me, at least, in my view, I see those 2 as pretty even, Lowe and India. And if they're even, that means you pretty much just get Noelvi Marte for free, who it's been said he's a top 30, top 50 prospect. I would agree with that sentiment. And then the Freddie Peralta trade, which was crazy. I love Freddie Peralta, but to get 4 prospects that turned into eventually 5 prospects total, 3 of which are top 50, top 100 prospects. Just more Bracton doing work. And then there was one more trade. Oh, it was the Brian Reynolds trade for Jimenez. Talk about all-time bad timing.
Yeah.
Long term, I think that trade's pretty close. I like Reynolds a little bit more, but just all-time bad timing because I think Reynolds hit a home run 3 straight days after that trade.
Yep.
So just good timing more so than good trade, but I do think it was a good trade for Tita. The last thing I'll hit on before I let it go is that Manoah trade. Cody was talking to me about it, just his options, and Alek Manoah went to West Virginia. I'm a West Virginia guy. I like Alek Manoah a lot, but I think it was a good trade in the long run because I think there's high potential that we're going to look back on that trade in a year or 2, and we're going to say, wait a minute, Cody got all of these players for 1 player because Peraza has huge potential. De Los Santos, huge potential. Cody said it. Yanquiel Fernandez is getting Yordan Alvarez comps. There is high potential. We'll look back at that and say, wait a minute. So.
Yeah, and definitely with the Manoah trade. I remember, Cody, we were talking about this, how you were like, you noticed his stuff was a little bit off in his first start, and obviously he bounced back, but could that be a trend going forward and to still get that many assets and that elite of assets for him, now you don't have to worry about the question mark. You have these young assets, and Sandoval obviously is a pretty good shoo-in, going forward. He probably won't have prime Manoah production, but having him along with these elite prospects you got with him was definitely a good deal. But for our last part of this first episode of the Base on Balls podcast, let's preview week 2. Got a lot of big heavyweight matchups coming up, a lot of intriguing matchups. I want to start with the commish. I want to hear your thoughts on what are your matchups to watch, and we'll just go around the virtual circle on what matchups to watch for week 2.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now. Give me just a second. Hey, and real quick, just to go back, I want to say about the Freddie Peralta trade. That seemed to be the one trade that kind of got the most hype from the week. Bragton did well there, and he got some good prospects there. He did well there. But I'm going to come in defense of him and say that's the price of under 28, 25 point per game pitching. That you're not going to get a Freddie Peralta unless you pay that price. And I spoke with him kind of in or around that time, and I told him, I said, Hen, one thing you got to consider, if you don't pay that price for Freddie Peralta, somebody you're competing with is going to, and that's even more of a disadvantage for you. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I think sometimes trades are just good for both owners, and I feel like that trade kind of was. As for week 2, I think it's obvious. Me versus Hen is definitely going to be a kind of the talk of the week. But also, I mean, Jamie versus John Height. That's huge too. Those are kind of the top 4 teams right there. Bragg gets a kind of easy matchup against Chad. Paul and Homko. I expect Paul to win that. I think if Paul were to lose that or it be close, I think the kind of the ticker for Paul on rebuilding would probably tick a little closer. Tita versus Jake. I fully expect Tita to kind of put Jake out of his misery there pretty quick that week. Scoop versus Bragton, there's some narratives there. That's going to be kind of interesting to watch. Scoop sets your lineup. And then Connor versus Smell. You expect Smell to win that week, but I wouldn't sleep on Connor like I told you guys. I mean, he was throwing everything at me. I expect him to throw everything at Smell. But, yeah, all eyes are going to be on me versus Hen, John Height versus Jamie. I will say, John Height, you better get healthy quick.
I know.
You got you know what I mean? You're going to have your hands full, myself included. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how I feel like me and Hen's teams are very similar in terms of Hen focuses on the youth too. We're pretty even at bats. We're pretty even at pitching. I feel like I may have an advantage in relief pitching. Not that sways one way or the other, but it's going to be close. It's going to be an exciting week.
Definitely going to be an electric factory, and we'll go over to Bragton now. So I guess we'll just go through, just give your picks real quick for each game, just to avoid any repetitiveness. So Bragton, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to give one game of the week, in my opinion, real quick before I do that. I think that the Paul Homko game is really big, given what we've just heard, that Paul might consider selling if that game is close or ends up losing that week. So I'll definitely be focused on that, because anytime a team decides to sell here, it can get pretty crazy deals-wise. So definitely going to be monitoring that game. Me and Scoop, I think I win based on the fact I'm going to have more pitching starts. I feel like that's going to be a given. I'm going to have more pitching starts, and I'll be looking at waivers and everything throughout the week. I think I got it. Smell and Connor, I think that's also going to be a good game. I think Smell's going to win. Cody and Hen, that's going to be obviously the biggest game of the week. I could see it going either way, but I'm going to give the edge to Cody here. Just based off pitching, I love Cody's young pitching. I think that Tita's got Jake fairly easily. Paul, I still think will beat Homko, but I guess it just matters how close it is. Bry's got it, no problem. And then John Height versus Jamie, I'm going to lean John Height. So we'll see what happens, though. But it's setting up to be a pretty good week. I'm excited.
Definitely. All right, Paul, you're up.
So let me start with the sod pools and Chihuahuas. That's Connor and Smelly. If Smelly wins, if the Chihuahuas win, they're going to be 2-0. So we talk about playoff teams. We talk about who's going to be in that 6-7 seed range. The Chihuahuas aren't going to go anywhere, I don't think. And I think they're going to win this week. In terms of the other games, obviously all eyes are on, Clearwater and Bowling Green, Cody, Hendog. That's going to be potentially, like I had said earlier, a championship preview. Although actually I think I said it would be John Height and Cody. Whatever, either way. Hendog's not going anywhere, obviously. I think I'm going to take Cody in that one, but I think that's your closest matchup of the week. Jamie and John Height, that'll be a close one too. I'll take John Height's team. I think the Vibes will win. Scoop and Bracton, going to be a tight one. I think Bracton's going to win, but if Scoop sets his lineup, there's no telling. I'll say it now. I think Tita is going to beat Jake, and then I do think I'm going to edge it out this week, but that we'll see. I don't have a whole lot of confidence. I'm going to call up Grayson Rodriguez. It's a little sneak preview for you guys because he starts this week.
Hey.
So I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna give it a try. I mean, I'm not. So I had said before I might be selling. That is a might. I'm not committing to that. I'm not. It's not all is lost here in Norfolk, but we'll see what happens. That's all I'll say. That's all I'm gonna commit to at this point.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. And what do you got?
Match for the week, I think. Me and Cody. I mean, and I have to pick myself. I mean, I can't not pick myself to win. And there's, not only is it a battle of potentially the two best teams in the league, but there's a couple of storylines involved. I don't know if we mentioned earlier the Boba Shed, Wander Franco almost trade that happened to basically now has shortstop 1 and 2 battling against each other. But also, I mean, I forget how long ago it was, but the Juan Soto Julio Rodriguez swap, that's a big storyline. That was probably one of the biggest trades. I mean, since at least I've been in the league, it was, if I remember correctly, it was Soto 1-1 and Daniel Espino for J-Rod 1-3 and Hunter Brown. I mean, two of the big players from that deal are also playing against each other, so something to keep track of. But so definitely a lot at stake here, even though it's only week 2. One of the bigger matchups we'll probably see all year. And then looking over to some of the other matches, Connor and Smelly, I think Connor, sometimes you get beat up by a good team, and sometimes you just got to take it out on someone else. So, I think Connor could come out with that week 2 win. Definitely going to be a close battle. And then Scoop Bracton, I mean, I think Scoop just doesn't have the pitching. I think he didn't get the minimum starts last week. He's been kind of struggling with stars lineups. I think just on that fact alone, Bracton will win. I think Tita will take care of business against Jake. Homko, Paul. I think Paul, you're due for a nice little bounce back. I don't think it'll be as close as you think it's going to be. I think you'll have a nice win, get you back on track. Brian, Chad, pretty easily Brian. And I'm intrigued by this Jamie-John Hay matchup because, Jamie obviously had the 3rd highest scoring week last week. Even with his pitching playing kind of mediocre, John Height is dealing with pitching problems in that a lot of his good pitchers are on IR, but I think pitching is king, and we saw how good his lineup did, even in a down week with JT Realmuto scoring in the negatives. I think I'd give him the victory. And then you're looking at an 0-2 Jamie team, which is kind of shocking just given how talented his team is, but it could also contextualize where he actually fits in the contender, kind of landscape.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll start from the bottom here. All right. So I think Bry, we've safely said was probably going to beat Chad this week. I think Paul, you're going to beat up Pomco this week. Again, I think with the bounce back and everything. I think Tita's going to beat Jake. I think Bracton is going to beat Scoop just for the fact, it's hard enough to even contact Scoop for trades sometimes. I know he's been a busy guy and a lot going on, but if he can't hit that start limit, it's going to be tough because Bracton is very good at finding some gems on the waiver wire. I think, again, that Smelly-Connor matchup's really interesting. I'm going to lean Smelly, but like you guys mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if Connor is going to maybe pull off, I guess, a mini upset there, if you could call it that. Me and Jamie, I'm going to say this right now. I wish I was playing Jamie in like 3 weeks from now because I think most of the guys in my IR are not coming back next week. But the one thing I will say is now that we're doing, 1 week at a time scoring instead of a week and a half or whatever, is I already set my pitchers up. And I think my worst picture is Seth Lugo, who's been on a tear. And I have only my top dogs going. So I don't have to worry about shitty ass Carlos Carrasco or I think I'm giving Bassett a rest for one of his starts. So I like my pitching better than Jamie's, but I am definitely concerned that I'm going up against, Pete Alonso, Will Smith, Freeman, Turner, all these dogs, and obviously going against, my Yankees ace, Garrett Cole. I need to watch him throw a no-hitter or something against me for narrative. So obviously I want to win this week, but I would not be surprised if Jamie beat me just because my pitching is not going to most likely be fully back yet. And then Hen versus Cody. I've been trying to think about this the whole time. And, I'm trying to come up with an answer. I think there's two things that I'm noticing. On Hen's side, I think the make or break point is going to be Max Scherzer for him because he was, kind of Mickey to start off the season. If he can get back to, ace Max Scherzer, especially throughout a lot of last season, I think Hen could pull away with this one potentially towards the end. And then with Cody, I think if Marcus Stroman, if he can keep up this elite numbers, I think it just might be too much because Cody's pitching is so good. It could just overwhelm him towards the end. So I don't think I can even pick a winner in that one. I think it's going to be so close. I just think those are two narratives to watch because Scherzer and Stroman were so highly talked about throughout the weekend. We'll see if those dudes, if Stroman slows down and Scherzer heats up. But before we wrap things up, I'll open the floor. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we close out this pilot episode?
I want to say congratulations to Smelly on getting the number 1 pick in hockey. So that's going to be
good stuff, Smelly.
That's going to be pretty fun. So excited for our new hockey league. That's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah.
Paul, you got anything?
It's been fun so far, guys. We had a lot of turnover in this offseason, and I just want to say I appreciate all the new owners. You guys are what makes the league fun. It's not me, it's not Cody, it's not Bracton. It's always the owners. I've said that for 15 years that I've been doing this. You guys make it as fun as you wanted to make it. And so far it's been pretty damn fun, and I look forward to some more fun for the rest of the season.
Agree with that as well. Thank you everybody.
And what do you got?
This is just a start. Exciting first week. Definitely going to be big trades happening. Exciting matchups. We have, the 4 highest scoring teams are playing against each other. Or either if it's not 4, it's not the top 4, it's 4 of the top 5. Definitely a lot at stake even early on, and I'm excited for this week. I think there's a lot on the line, and just excited for the rest of this year because it's shaping up to be a pretty exciting one.
And before we go to the commission, I'll give my little 2 cents. I think it was an awesome first week. I'm going to say for me, this is my first real Dynasty Baseball League. I've done redrafts, for a long time. And, I'm watching baseball just a whole new way, and it made this week so much fun. I really can't wait for the rest of the season. I just think there's so much intrigue with this league, and I think we got a really good group of guys to just, the rest of the season. This podcast is going to be fun to do every week. Cody's predictions, just the banter we have in our main chat. And I think everyone gets along pretty well. So it's definitely a lot of fun, and week 2 should be a banger. So, Kamish, what are your final remarks?
Yeah, I'm going to echo, I guess what everybody's saying, especially Paul and Braxton. Like, we got a good group here. We got a competitive group. You know, we kind of do stuff all off season, the trades, and we talk and we project and we plan. And then, you know, it's funny when it starts. It's like, okay, it's game on. You know, and this week was a lot of fun. I expect there to be some trades this week, some eye-popping things. I know Braxton's doing work. You guys, I mean, has Tita made 7 trades since we started this podcast? I mean, you know, he's cooking something up, you know, right now. But yeah, league's in a good spot. We just got to keep the group together, keep kind of rolling, and let's all pray for the hot rods. You know, that we can get 2-0. That's a big focus. I know the fan base out there is wanting a 2-0. We're hoping for it, and it's, you know, I think John Height said it. I don't even know how to predict that matchup. It's probably going to come down to like the Sunday night baseball game. You know what I mean? There's a game on Sunday night, a standalone game. It's probably going to come down to that. I would imagine. I just went through as we were doing this podcast and set my lineup for the week. I had 16 starts. So I was having to cut some guys to get down to the 12 required. But, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's, you know, good week ahead. Like Hendog said, 4 of the top 5 scorers are playing each other. Big implications, you know, early on in the season in week 2. And I look forward to it. Let's see what happens.
Definitely. Well, hope you guys all in the Johnny Lee Memorial League tap into this to hear what some of your fellow league members had to say. But if you want to be on this next week, obviously hit us all up. You know, we'd love to have as many people on this as possible. But that'll do it for episode 1, and have a great night.